Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Talking Timepieces, where we talk about watch collecting and horology. Today it's St. Patrick's Day. You know, free hat courtesy of Murphy's. That the hat is sponsored. I got it for nothing. I had to pay for the beer though, and actually I was drinking Guinness, so a little bit of both sidesism there. But it is St. Patrick's Day, and I was just going to make it the episode of let's talk about the show and what we're planning and for the future and please subscribe and all that other stuff. But I was sitting at the bar before coming here, and a colleague suggested I should talk about Irish watch brands, and I thought, what a great idea. I should have thought of that idea, but obviously I did not, but he did, and so that's why we're going to talk about them. But I also thought I might as well talk a little bit about the channel because, as some of you know, and some of you may not know, I treat this as a hobby. This is a hobby for me. I'm not trying to get monetized. I mean, I am monetized, but I don't have a Patreon. I'm not you know, banging the money drum, as it were. I am going to try to find, if you know anybody who knows web design, I'm a hardware engineer guy, not a software engineer guy. I would sell the talking timepieces mugs and maybe t-shirts and stuff like that, but that would be more for fun than to try to make, I mean, well, never hurts to make a profit, but I run this channel primarily because I love watches and um, as a journalist in my day job, I have the desire to journalize, as it were, and I have the equipment from my day job, so I can. Although, ironically, this equipment I only use for the show. Although I do use the web streaming camera for Zoom calls for business, but my Rode studio mic, which I love this microphone. This is a beautiful, beautiful microphone. I bought it for the show because one of the things I was told about the show was my voice is probably one of the best factors of the show. And so I thought, well, let me get a halfway decent microphone so that the voice comes through. Hey, B Matic, how's it going, my dear friend? Um, so, having said that, my long-term plans, ironically, I have no beer in the house, so I'm going to have to toast with Sect, uh, German sparkling. Happy St. Patrick's Day to all of you out there. But yeah, so my long-term plan, however, is I intend to retire in sometime in the next 3 to 5 years, 5 to 7 years. And hopefully by then, this channel will have been built up with organic traffic. See, 'cause the nice thing about the way we're doing it now is the only people who subscribe to this channel are people who really care about watches and want to talk about watches. I don't do a lot of Rolex market talk. I don't talk about a lot of the current market trends when I talk about, I mean, I occasionally do, but I like to talk more about watch collecting philosophy, watch brands, why we buy watches, why we wear watches, why we collect watches, because that's the motivation for me. Um, and the numbers that I get are relatively low. I mean, none of these live streams have done over 1,000 views. I mean, they each get several hundred views, and I have several hundred videos, and some of the videos I have do get big numbers. I've got some videos that are 10 and 20,000 views. But for example, these live streams, most of them under 500 views each. And I've been doing this now for over a year as far as live streams go, because I got monetized about a year and a half, or maybe almost two. It's been a bit, but I got monetized no last September, so year and a half pretty much. And I don't mind that I don't get big numbers because I know the numbers that I get are honest numbers, are real numbers. These are people, they're not coming because I'm talking about the latest thing, the latest shiny thing. So everybody's got a rush and, oh, what's his opinion on the new white Speedmaster? Because for example, I haven't even talked about the new white Speedmaster, which is a fantastic piece. But when I talk about it, I want to talk about it when it's a watch that more people have access to, that it's not a sensationalist thing. I like doing hands-on. I'm probably not going to be able to do a hands-on with the white Speedy, but I want to have at least held it in my hand so I can give an honest opinion about it when I talk about it. And that's what I'm saying. I'm a hobbyist channel. I want to talk about watches from an informed position. I'm not just going to spout some marketese, about, oh yeah, I heard this watch does this. I want to see that. I want to hold the watch in my hands whenever possible. If I can't hold it in my hands, I want to at least uh, read about it and research it and understand who made the movement, where did the design come from, what's the legacy and the heritage of the company involved. I think that's important when it comes to watch collecting, to feel it from a watch side, not a market side. And and actually it does work for me because more than half of the videos that people do watch are more than 6 months old. So it means that my old content has long tail because I'm not talking about things. I'm talking about things that are more absolute, more timeless. What do I think of XYZ watch? Not how it fits into the marketplace. Why do we collect? What do you think about watch sizes? What do you think about watch colors? What do you think about watch functions? Topics that we can have a discussion about, have an understanding, ask questions about. And so eventually, I do want this channel to go commercial, but more as a retirement side hustle. But I will always have this channel as long as I'm a watch collector with the capability to produce this channel because I like watches and I like to talk about watches with people. Because especially in bars, because I was out today, and I wound up getting into I wouldn't say heated discussion, but a pointed discussion about whether the moon exists and the fiction of gravity. Um, and I wasn't sure. He was an engineer, but there are some weird people out there who are engineers and scientists. I wasn't sure if he was just trying to jerk my chain or if he honestly believed that gravity is a myth and that the space can't be a vacuum because you can only keep a gas inside of a container. But at that point, like I said, you're at a bar, you don't even know how much they've drunk. Me, I do have a couple of drinks in the evening before the show because it is an evening show, but I also know I'm going to be getting in front of a camera, so I watch what I drink. There have been episodes where friends have tried to get me a little tipsy, knowing that I was going on the show, and you might be able to tell by my attitude in the show. But I like to think that I rattle on so much about watches that the only difference if I'm drunk is that I would probably have more slurred words. But I would probably say the same stuff about watches because it's such a fascinating topic and it's a timeless topic. And actually, all jokes aside, it's a great topic for bars and the like because there's no politics, no race, no religion, no sex in watches. Watches on the purist side are about design, technology, engineering, art, craft, a little bit of marketing. But the watch industry itself, I like to look at it from as pure an approach as possible. And I recognize that that is not always the way things are in the industry, but we can always hope. Um, but as far as Irish watches go, I actually did a little bit of research, and it's interesting because there's not that much done about it. A lot of the people who do talk about it refer to an article that was written by, let's see, where's the author of this piece? The person who wrote this piece is named, come on, don't want to waste too much time on the poking around. Oh, Nina Scally, and it was updated in February of 2024. So this is actually very up to date. And although there are more than 7 watchmakers in Ireland, all of the information I could find point to the 7 biggest, obviously. I shouldn't say obviously. Maybe there would be some other number, but I'm assuming, I don't like to assume, but I'm assuming that the other 10 or so Irish watchmakers are either very small or very niche or vertical or whatever. But the range in Ireland goes from custom pieces that could cost you $60,000 from a company called McGonigal Watches, to just mainstream quartz chronos, from companies like Ansley watches. Oh, I mentioned McGonagall watches. Telstar's actually been around for a while. They've been around since 1976, and they make some interesting hybrid display, uh, LCD displays with hands, kind of like a high-end G-Shock, but not meant for ruggedness, but I meant as far as like that hybrid display kind of look that the higher, the G-Shocks with hands have. They've got a couple of sub windows. Or Breitling Aerospace. There's actually a Breitling Aerospace being sold right now by a guy named Tic Tac, TICCTACC on Instagram. If you're interested in picking up a really good shape, a Breitling, the hybrid display with hands and the aerospace with the LCD displays in the hands, they've got one for sale. Um, so this company, the Telstars, but theirs are mostly quartz pieces in their collection. And then there's a company called Push, but they do digital watches. Rovada, they've been around 1990s, and they make very Irish watches with Cladach on them and things along those lines. And then, like the Irish Zin would be SAS, and they make rugged pieces. And then there's W&W Watch and Wallet. So even Ireland has got a healthy, reasonably healthy watch industry, which also, when you think about it, the mechanical watch industry, I mean, watches in general have gone through a cyclic phase of almost disappearing and coming back. And the mechanical watch marketplace is larger now than it was prior to the quartz wars. So the fact that Ireland has a healthy subculture in watches is a very good thing. And I mean, even the United States, even the United States, but I mean, sadly, Hamilton used to be an American company. Bulova used to be an American company. They could have stayed in the United States, but market conditions did not support that at the time, right? And so, um, a lot of these new Irish companies have come about in this century or the end of last century, after the major tectonic upheaval of the quartz wars, when the dust had finally started to settle. And I think the Irish watch industry, like I said, from what I have learned from researching, is an excellent example of how watches and watch collecting and the watch industry has rebounded to the point where it is again a truly international business with specialists in most countries manufacturing products, not just for their local consumption, but also for international trade. And I think when we talk about watch collecting and watch manufacturing, that you know, the fact that it is an international business, the fact that it is an international hobby with, in some cases, very deep roots. Some of these companies in Ireland harken back to heritages that date back to Irish Chippendale and table clocks and the like, when Britain and Ireland made fine clocks for the world before even the Swiss got involved. And the fact that watchmaking probably almost disappeared at a guess from Ireland, and now it's back, and that there are um, enough major companies doing business in the space to, populate them all, um, with all different shops. It's a positive sign to me that, watches, I recognize, people's philosophy about watches change on a regular basis with smartwatches and the other things of that nature. But one of the things that I have noticed over the years is that watches have, I would say, two or three primary roles in society. I mean, like wristwatches. By the way, wristwatch check. I'm wearing the Age Locker Tourbillon, the Age Locker Chinese Tourbillon on a rubber strap, so I could wear it more casually. And this is a really cool piece. It costs about 800 bucks. I got it on Amazon. Everybody's been talking about this tourbillon. It's one of the few really nice Chinese tourbillons out there, but there are more. And it's an example of Chinese companies that are making new designs, interesting designs, like Sega Design out of China, who won the Swiss Horological Awards 2 years ago in the challenge category. You know, so Ireland's watch industry, I think, is a very healthy example of how watches have grown to be part of society again. And I mean, frankly, now that Samsung's coming out with a smart ring, right? Now you get a smart ring, does everything that a smartwatch. I mean, okay, not the data information aspect of being just a little data display on your wrist, but if you're the person who's wearing that smartwatch because they want to get their steps in and they want to track their sleep and they want to make sure that their metabolic functions are tracked and heart rate and all of that other stuff, a smart ring will, I mean, can do it today, but it's going more and more mainstream. And frankly, now that technology has gotten down to manageable sizes and interesting form factors, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw earrings that clipped on hard enough to get that kind of information off your ear, and then double as a headset for your cell phone or something like that. Um, as those functionalities get smaller and can migrate to different parts of your clothing or jewelry, you can go back to wearing a mechanical watch or at least a quartz watch with hands. Um, you won't need a smartwatch for biological tracking. If you want that secondary display, the watch will provide it, but in less than a decade, 5 years, smart glasses will have gotten inexpensive and good looking enough, or at least not ugly enough, that smart glasses will be a viable alternative. I still have my Google Glass, waiting for that to get cool again, and I'll come out with it. Uh, Although just for the heck of it, because it's got prescription lenses in it. No way on God's green earth I'm going to pay to put a new set of prescription lenses in them. But I can stumble around at least at least it won't be completely blind because it is a partial subscription prescription. But we're very, very close to virtual reality, augmented reality, actually, because virtual reality exists and all, but that's closed off. Augmented reality is when they start putting that information directly into your field of view. I actually saw the very first demonstration, public demonstration of augmented reality at Sony's Kihara Research Center in Tokyo back in like 2005. And at the time, they didn't know what to do with it. They gave us badges. We walked into the conference room, and on a screen, we saw ourselves, and our business cards popped into the air over our heads on the screen. And they said there were little LED emitters in our badges that went into the camera and gave the camera the URL information to download the data. Today, they can do that with a QR code. But the point I'm trying to make is that these technologies are rapidly developing and rapidly migrating. And when that smartwatch is sitting in the drawer obsolete, well, maybe not this piece, but for example, I was going to mention this one because this is the only green watch I own, um, my Accutron. And this Accutron will still be a collectible watch as long as people look at watches, collect watches, whereas that smartwatch will be sitting in a drawer collecting dust as an obsolete piece of equipment. Or, I mean, we want to talk about timeless pieces. Speedmaster, all right? You know, on the space station in the future when they're going on that moon, the moon honeymoon, the guy's going to be flexing and trying to show off his Speedmaster that his great grandfather left him. Um, Watches have a transcendence over popular technology, is a good way I think I could refer to it. That electronics based popular technology, by definition, obsoletes itself as the newer technologies get developed. One of the things that I've always liked about watches, and I've said before on the show, and now I can put it into this context, is that mechanical watches essentially represent the peak, the zenith of last generation's technology, mechanical engineering. Now, recognizing that mechanical engineering still is developing as an art, and a lot of watches today are using computer aided design and going deep into it and making interesting new mechanical designs. But by definition, as a mechanical design, it is an expression of past art, and it is not a convenience piece of technology. You see, I hope you see where the context I'm trying to put this in that that watch, this Rolex Air King, right? It will be obsoleted by newer Rolex watches, maybe a newer Air King in 5, 10 years or whatever. But as a piece of mechanical art, it is a snapshot in time, pun intended. Actually, pun not intended, but then I realized it is a good pun. But a watch is a snapshot in time of the craft of the people who created it. And that's one of the reasons I collect them. So, going back to the topic of Irish watches, the fact that Ireland has a reasonably healthy watch industry is, I think, is a very, very, positive sign for the watch community as a whole. Even if most of these companies were only developed in the last 20 years, 30 years, that just shows that the industry is rebounding and growing and evolving and developing in different ways. B-Matic, tell me some daily beaters under 600. You need one. Don't want to hurt my tutor in your IWC. Under 600 bucks. Under 600 bucks. Um, Hamilton khaki. Hamilton, and if you like shiny, get a Hamilton officer's khaki. You can pick up a Hamilton khaki field, a nice looking one, like a four, and because a lot of them are small-ish, because field watches tend to be small-ish, because you don't want a big clunky watch banging into stuff. But some are bigger, like you can get a Hamilton, like a 42 millimeter or a 40 millimeter Hamilton khaki field, good looking, 700 bucks or less. If you get their basic khaki fields, robust, good mechanical watch, good visibility, 500 bucks. I recently reviewed an Aristo no name Flieger watch, like any of those mainstream German Flieger watches from Stova or Aristo or Laco. Zinn makes some really slightly higher end, but a Stova Flieger, pilot watch, German pilot watch, a Laco German pilot watch, mechanical, display back, well made, rugged, and inexpensive. To the point where you buy it and you would hesitate to use it as a beater because you'd be afraid of scratching it because it's such a pretty piece. And you can get any of those pieces for under 600 bucks. But yeah, look up Laco, look up Stova, Stowa, look up Aristo. Um, there are a couple of other really, or just look up German Flieger. And in shopping, you're going to see a big assortment, and pick up one from one of those old school German companies. That's another episode I think I might talk about the German watch industry, because the German watch industry is interesting because it's got some very forward looking companies. It's got some very heralded legacy revered companies like Lange and Söhne. Uh, it's got technical companies like Zinn, and I was just at their facility last Wednesday. I already posted that the latest 3-watch collection suggestion was literally at the Zinn factory, and I shot enough video to make 2 or 3 videos from it, and I'm going to start putting them out next week, because they have had a big anniversary, and so they had a nice museum exhibit in their lobby, and I did some video of the museum exhibit, but we also did a technical tour, and so they gave me a nice example of why the oil filled is more than just pressure and looks, and how they explained a little bit of how tegumentation works for the case hardening. So we've got a lot of interesting stuff coming from Zinn. But then you've got a group of companies that make great watches that are kind of in I would say a niche, but you can almost call it a rut because like Stova makes fantastic watches, but they pretty much only make German Flieger watches. And so that's their lane and they stick to it and they have a deep reputation, so they get to drive as fast as they want in that lane. Companies like Laco are trying to bridge out into other um, spaces, but again, they're pretty much well known as primarily a German Flieger watch company, and most of there are like three or four mainstream German Flieger watch companies that made them during the old timey days and still make them today. And any one of those pieces would be fantastic as a good looking beater. And you can get there's a healthy collection of German Fliegers for under $600. But like I said, if you want Swiss, there's the Hamilton khaki or Timex makes a lot of nice pieces. I had originally thought Timex was owned by Citizen. It's just that they use a lot of Miyota movements. But Citizen does own Bulova, and and I think that they are using it as much as possible to gain traction to put some really cool designs out that don't have the stigma of being Citizen. Because that's what Seiko's problem is with Grand Seiko is it still says Seiko on it, and they tried it with Crador to try to start a new brand, but I think they jumped too high with that brand. It's ultra luxury. I think Seiko should come out with a new brand in the mainstream. I don't like the term entry level, starter, basic luxury sports watches, something in the $1,500 to $200 price range. If they like, just like what, and well, actually, Bulova is doing for Citizen. There's the best Bulova stuff's runs around $1,000 or so, like the Double Diver GMT and some of those pieces. So, but they're getting a lot of traction with those Bulova pieces because they're putting really good tech in it. But it's the same movements that are in some of those Citizen pieces. But because Bulova has a different reputation and history in the marketplace, they can get away with putting out different watches that have different impacts compared to Citizen. So maybe Seiko should buy, just like I can't wait to see what Breitling does with Universal Genève. But just as uh, Citizen bought Bulova, I think Seiko should find a limping Swiss watch company to invest in. And then they would have a vehicle where they could export their technology and craftsmanship in a way that the general public doesn't get the Woolworths stigma of being an inexpensive mainstream watch brand. What are your thoughts? Be Matic. Glycine Airman is also an option, has history too, which is a bonus. But Glycine Airman tends to be more expensive. But then again, they were just bought by, not just, but they were recently bought. Weirdly enough, the name is, they make cheap watch. That's the Invicta. They were just bought by Invicta. And that gave Glycine a hit because Glycine was considered a niche brand, but they have a tremendous legacy. The Glycine Airman was I think it was the first pilot's GMT. A lot of pilots used it, combat pilots used it during the Vietnam War. The Airman's got a tremendous legacy. I had an SST, the new version of it, since Invicta bought it, and that's not a bad watch. That really is not a bad watch. Invicta, I think, is letting Glycine at least keep its heritage of making nice pieces and not too garish, because Invicta, some of their pieces are really garish. But Glycine, I had thought the Glycines were closer to the $1,000 price point. But if you've seen an Airman at $500, look it over closely. But that wouldn't be a bad choice either. If you can get a Glycine Airman for $600 or less, that wouldn't be a bad choice either. Because like I said, they're owned by Invicta now, but Invicta's a Swiss company too, I believe. And well, Invicta's a mainstream company, let's put it that way. And like I said, from what I've seen of the SST, because I had the SST for a review, I wound up selling it. It wasn't talking to me, but it's a nice piece. So yeah, the Glycine, I hope Invicta doesn't screw up glycine, but so far it doesn't look like they have. And again, glycine gives Invicta a higher end name to sell under that doesn't have the stigma of being called Invicta, you know, because glycine has got a legitimate horological history, you know, and and like I said, I had an Airman SST GMT. The review's in the archive. You can take a look at it. Um, Nice piece. So from that evidence, I would say, yeah, get yourself a glycine airman if you can get one inexpensive. Actually, if you figure the SST retails for like 900, you could probably get it used for five. But that's a nice watch. So far so good. Glycine has not. I mean, Invicta has not screwed up glycine, and hopefully they won't. But so far so good. Let's see. We're This is like I said. This is St. Pat's, and I have had a couple of drinks. And so I think I'm gonna call it unless we get any other questions in at the last minute. Otherwise, uh, I will leave you until next week. Next week, I will talk about German watch industry, and I'll do even more research. I mean, I know a lot about the German watch industry, and like I said, I was just at the Zinn play. I live here in Germany, so we'll have a nice talk about German watches next week. But until then, I want you to all have a fantastic week, and I want you to have a great evening as well. Take care.